Westminster is in shock. Danny Krueger, a stalwart Conservative, has defected to Reform.
We both know the man well, are going to explain his motivations and why it is a complete disaster for Kemi Badenoch.
This is coming just a couple of weeks before Tory party conference.
It could have been worse. He could have done this the day before Tory party conference.
And don't you think it will happen again?
What, somebody else between now and then?
Absolutely.
When are we going there?
This
it's the first weekend in October, isn't it?
This is the significance of Danny Krueger.
Yeah.
If him, then anyone. And I can see Reform just booking that ballroom every week for the next 3 months or so.
Having a succession.
Having a succession of people coming out just to eclipse Kemi.
Tim Stanley, fresh from Danny Krueger.
Yes.
Announcing his new best friendship with Nigel Farage.
For those listening to audio, I am wearing a Dayglow Reform
Love it.
bracelet.
Don't wear that outside, just in case you get lynched. I didn't see this coming.
I did not see this coming, which is one reason why it was quite sparsely attended. There were very few Reform Party members there. It was held at the Mayfair Hotel, which is not their normal location. A beautiful gold ballroom. It felt like a bit like the ballroom in The Shining.
I've been there. I did Wendy Richards' exit interview from EastEnders at that hotel. Carry on.
Well, in a way, this is not totally dissimilar.
Indeed.
So there are very few members. There was the press poll there, and there was a whisper that maybe there'd be defection involved. The name that everyone had was Esther McVeigh.
Oh, yes.
And I don't know if that was a clever deflection on the part of Reform, but when Danny walked out onto the stage, there was genuine surprise, and on my part, some shock.
Did you audibly gasp?
I didn't quite gasp, but I guess it felt personal to me in a way that it won't for many people in the room, because I have known Danny Krueger for many years.
Yeah, you were going to have dinner with him at the Tory party conference.
I did tweet, I guess that our dinner at the Tory conference is off. And as soon as it was over, I went over and spoke to him. And I put that to him. This was the question the public needs to know the answer to. We're still having dinner at the Tory conference. And he said, the dinner is still on, but I won't be there. It's now being hosted by Claire Cortino.
Oh, well, fair enough.
Yeah, I won't be going to that.
Well, out of interest, because you do know Danny Krueger well, and tell me in a minute how you know him so well, but was he, how did he treat you? Because he'd be interested, I'm sure, in your view of whether this was a wise idea or not.
He said, what do you think about this? And I said, I have mixed opinions. And I felt that wasn't quite what he wanted to hear. We didn't have long enough to discuss why. But I said to him, to me, it just feels like the Conservative Party is splitting up. And that's painful.
Shall we listen first of all to Danny Krueger describe why he has defected to Reform?
And now our country is entering the most profound set of crises in my lifetime, under a government even worse, far worse, than the one it replaced. Crisis in the economy, crisis at the border, crisis in our streets, crisis in our military, crisis for young people. Yes, we are still a great country, and there are good reasons that so many migrants want to come here. But there are also reasons so many entrepreneurs and young people want to leave. Britain is not broken, but it is badly damaged. And so in this crisis, something's got to give. I hoped after our defeat last year that the Conservative Party would learn the obvious lesson, that the old ways don't work, that centrism is not enough, that real change is needed. But no, we've had a year of stasis and drift and the sham unity that comes from not doing anything bold or difficult or controversial. And the result is in the polls. And those lost voters aren't coming back. And every day, more and more people are joining them in deserting the party that has failed.
When Krueger started speaking, you can hear from his speaking style, he's very unlike a Reform person, right? He is philosophical, and he's a man of ideas, and his language is also very precise. And so when he spoke, there was a feeling among the press, and I spoke to journalists afterwards, and they agreed with me on this, of, an actual adult has entered the room.
Yes.
He's not the biggest name in Westminster. He's not a name the public will be familiar with, although some people might know him for the fight that he put up against the assisted dying bill. That's probably what he's best known for. His position in the Tory party is only Shadow Under-Secretary for Work and Pensions. Nonetheless, this is a frontbencher and the first sitting Tory MP to defect. Lee Anderson defected, but he wasn't in the party when he defected. So it is politically significant, but not the biggest thing. But for those of us who know Westminster, this is a very serious person who's written a book about his ideas. And for him to go over, that feels like a real loss for the Tories and a real gain for reform. I actually sensed, watching Farage's face, that at certain points he slightly outshone the party leader.
Ooh, is that allowed?
I don't know if that's allowed. And Nigel, when he feels like he's not entirely the centre of attention, starts to pull Frankie Howard-type faces. Sort of oohs and ahs and oh no, misses.
He's playing to the crowd in the background.
It's very funny to watch. And there was even a moment when Tony Diver of the Telegraph asked a question about, you have invited civil servants and military people to get in touch with advice on how to run the government. Are you inviting them to betray national secrets, official secrets? And Nigel went in on, well, it's a great thing to get their advice and we welcome it and we can't wait to hear from them. And there are a lot of people inside the government who really think this country's a mess. And then Krueger spoke and said, I just want to be absolutely clear, we're not inviting people to break the Official Secrets Act.
So and he's bringing him back onto the reservation.
It wasn't, yes, it wasn't quite a correction, but you watched this and thought, that's both useful for the party to have someone who really understands how these things work, but also, will Nigel like being subtly corrected?
So they're going to put Krueger in charge of preparing reform for government.
Yes.
Also, I do think it ticks the box that needed to be ticked for Nigel Farage, which is briefly summarised as, do you know what you're doing? You don't have any experience at all of actually running a country.
Yes.
There's a lot of rhetoric from reform. Some of it isn't backed up with detail. Sometimes there's a lot of talk and no trousers to the talk.
Yes.
Kruger's that serious figure. He also did a lot of heavy lifting. People might remember him from COVID, actually, because he was extremely anti-lockdown and made a very, very cogent and compelling case for keeping schools open.
Yes. He was caught unmasked at one point as well.
Shock horror.
He was, yes.
How dare he? And the other thing that piqued my interest is that I think we can both agree that Danny Krueger is a Christian conservative.
Oh, yes.
He is very much in the vein of what Farage is talking about when he talks about faith, family and flag, which is heavily borrowed from the J.D. Vance school of American right-wing politics. And that's intriguing to me. Do we think that Farage is going to move closer to a degree of evangelising? Because that's interesting. I wouldn't suggest that... I think Farage does do God, to quote Alistair Campbell, saying the opposite of Tony Blair. I think he does God, and clearly he is a huge proponent of traditional British values.
Yes.
But I'm not sure if Farage is as credible in the kind of Christian, in inverted commas, mould as somebody like Vance.
I would say Danny Krueger is more a Christian than he is a conservative. The
Right.
the politics flows from the religion. I wouldn't say that's true of Nigel Farage. But Nigel Farage does go to church. He has, I'm told, in his private life shown greater interest in religion in recent years. That's a personal thing. It also reflects developments on the right. What is the big existential question? It's this feeling that Western civilization is under attack and could actually collapse. Well, what is Western civilization? It's Judeo-Christian values, if you want to put it in its most cliched way, which really means Christianity, right? So it makes sense that reform would be open to those who are motivated by Christianity, because that's the direction the right and much of the country is taking at the moment anyway. Krueger joining them invites Christian conservatives to come over.
Yes.
And there are many we could name. I'm thinking Miriam Cates, who works with you at GB News.
Yes.
We've all been wondering what's she going to do.
Yes.
Suella Braverman is a Buddhist, not a Christian, but is very socially and culturally conservative. Will she come over?
Jacob Rees-Mogg.
Jacob Rees-Mogg. Krueger is the kind of person who, as we said, not well known by the public, but very well known and respected within Westminster, who particularly evangelical conservatives will look at and think, well, if he's going over, maybe I can. On the point about, which everyone's going to hint at, Farage himself laughed at his personal record on Christian questions.
Yes.
He was asked the question, Krueger has said that marriage is between a man and a woman. Is that a view that the Reform Party takes? Interestingly, Nigel didn't allow Krueger to answer. Probably sensible, because Danny might have dug a grave for himself there, because he would give an honest answer, which is, I think he does believe that. But Nigel very cleverly pivoted onto the importance of stability. And he said, I think that people know that a man and a woman in a relationship tend to have greater stability. And then he laughed and said, of course, not in my case.
No, indeed.
And I think that, but I actually think that's a strength. The ability to sell traditional Christian values with a nod and a wink that says, but I'm not judgmental and preachy because look at me. I like a fag and I like a glass of wine. That's the Nigel Farage shtick, right?
Yes.
I'm right wing, but I'm not a nutball.
No, indeed. It's a kind of like Butlinization of being a pastor. It's sort of like there's a degree in which Faragianism is a religion, but it's a religion wearing a red coat.
Yes.
And therefore it's quite accessible. And there is a strain of conservatism that some people find off-putting. God rest his soul. There were critics of Charlie Kirk who, my daughter, for instance, she liked some of his right-wing protestations, but she found him a bit too Christian for her liking. And there'll be many like that. You know, we're increasingly secular. I'm also wondering whether the Christian shtick is literally a stick with which to beat those who seem to be propping up Islamic fundamentalists. But that's probably a conversation for another day. We should mention that Danny Kruger's mother is Prue Leith.
We should.
I think we can agree is probably a national treasure now.
Let's say something about who Danny is, because I think it's fascinating. The way to understanding Danny Kruger is that he's South African.
Yes.
He wasn't raised there, but his parents are both South African. His name is Kruger. And if you look at him, there's something, he has that cold, steely-eyed look of someone looking out across the veldt at an animal to hunt. There's this sort of inner South African steeliness to Danny Kruger, which I think is very compelling. Yes, mother is Prue Leith, went to Eton, went to Oxford. He was David Cameron's chief speechwriter. He's responsible for the Hugger Hoodie speech. But as he pointed out when this was raised at the press conference, if you read the entire speech, it was saying people who wear hoodies come from broken homes, etc., and need the love of the community. But if they cross the line and break the laws, they should also be locked up. And the problem is the speech is only remembered for half of that. But in his private life, he's for many years run a charity that particularly helps people who have just been let out of prison. And that's how I met Danny Kruger. About 15 years ago, I was invited by his charity to write a play for people who had just been let out of prison to act in.
Yes, go on.
And it was a fascinating experience. I met him briefly in the course of doing that. It was a privilege to work with the youth, most of whom were Afro-Caribbean, working class, just out of prison. And I wrote them a little play. And
what was it called? And what was it about?
I can't remember.
What?
But it was about...
How can you write a play and not remember the title or the contents, Tim
I know,
Stanley?
because I did a lot of things when I was younger, and it doesn't stick in the brain. But Danny will confirm this did happen. And I'm very proud of having done it because it was very nice to work with them and fascinating.
You know, when you spoke about him just now, I thought, gosh, he's very much cut from the Ian Duncan Smith cloth, isn't he?
Yes.
Wants to help with social justice.
Yes.
Wants to be a proponent of compassionate conservatism.
Yes.
Isn't your archetypal righty, really, although he is very forthright with his views.
But this is conservatism with a conscience.
It's
Absolutely
conservatism with a conscience, which is not necessarily something you would say about reform at the moment. You know, reform at the moment seems quite cruel, according to the left anyway. You know, deport migrants. Let's go back to the 80s. Greed is good. You know, a lot of people do appear at their conferences and events wearing suits that seem to have been tailored in the 1980s. Let's be honest.
Yes.
So this is kind of like a degree of right-wing progressiveness comes with Danny Kruger.
But he would. So others would have said in the past, Maggie Thatcher wanted to reform the economy, not because she wanted people to become insanely rich and be nasty and greedy, but because she wanted to help the poor to rise up.
And to buy their council houses.
Nigel Farage wants to control immigration, not because he hates foreigners, but because he thinks it's bad for the economy and it's bad for society. And I think the Tommy Robinson march at the weekend proved that to be true. That is one of the legacies of open borders, is the return of the far right. And in Danny's case, he's a critic of liberalism, not because he's a horrible or intolerant person, but because he thinks that particularly social and cultural liberalism has abandoned people and has meant in practice people just living lonely, unfulfilled lives.
Should we just have a quick chat about the march before we just digest what this all means for Kemi Badenoch, who's gone from her best week now to her worst week?
Nigel Farage repeatedly said at the conference that the vast majority of people at the march were good, law-abiding people who just wanted to express their patriotism.
Totally agree. And of course,
I don't know if it's true because I wasn't on it.
Well, look, I saw some footage of it. I didn't go on it either. I saw some footage of it. Obviously, there are always those elements, the kind of mad, thuggish elements that just want a scrap with the police.
Yeah.
And they're at pretty much any march. I thought it was a little bit like when we interviewed the Pink Lady who had led the protests outside the migrant hotel in Epping, that it was people trying to protest on behalf of their daughters, their granddaughters and civil society in general, that they wanted to uphold British values and that they wanted to fly the George flag and indeed the Union flag without accusations of bigotry and racism.
I agree with all of that.
However,
I just want to say that when people marched against Gaza, the right did not say the vast majority were decent people. The right tended to say the vast majority of them were jihadis and were an example of this country fracturing. And I don't get the double standard. I actually went on the Gaza march as a journalist, not supporting it, but I went on it. I didn't go on the right-wing one. And I have to say, the vast majority of people at the Gaza march, I would describe as law-abiding family people who are there with their children.
Generalisations are best avoided when it comes to large groups of people, I think we can probably conclude. But I also thought it was quite interesting. There's been this attempt to make Tommy Robinson mainstream, and then he's at the march flanked by Katie Hopkins and Lawrence Fox.
And the attempt to make him mainstream is coming from America.
Yes,
not
Elon
from this
Musk,
country.
Who doesn't really understand British politics very well.
He was speaking on the stage with Tommy Robinson and uttered the words, "You must fight or you die." And obviously in some contexts, fighting could just mean politically, you're going to stand for office and get those votes, etc. In another context, it could mean inciting violence. And I think that I think his clumsy language in that case is an argument for him staying away from what could be a very explosive situation. And then when they do have this giant march and when they do organise speakers, who do they wind up with? Katie Hopkins. And also on the march was Lawrence Fox.
He's not mainstream.
He's not mainstream. He's not big. He's not substantive. If this march is for anything and it comes down to Lawrence Fox, Katie Hopkins and Tommy Robinson, I just don't know what it's for. I don't know what it represents, except I hate to say it, but people trying to make a second career out of politics.
I had such a weird weekend on X because I'd written about Charlie Kirk and then I had written about how William should forgive Harry. And I literally, the phrase in my mind was stuck in the middle with you. Clowns to the left of me, jokers to the right. In response to the Charlie Kirk article, I was both too right-wing and not right-wing enough because I don't support Tommy Robinson. And then in regards to the William and Harry article, I was in the unique situation of having had trolling by Sussex fans for years, then got a load of abuse from William and Kate fans.
Yes.
And then I just concluded that social media was a sewer full of very, very strange and unnecessarily aggressive people.
Yes.
I did something nice at the weekend, though, in the midst of all this, and this is that I attended the last night of the proms.
Oh, lovely.
And it was glorious, and it was flag-waving in a good way.
I love the dress.
Oh, the dress of the soprano was fantastic. There were just amazing performances all round, including from Brian May and Roger Taylor, reenacting Bohemian Rhapsody with the orchestra. Bill Bailey turned up and played the typewriter song and then played the organ and was very, very funny. And Kemi Badenoch was there. And let's just have a moment because on Saturday, pray silence for Kemi Badenoch. On Saturday night, she was getting a lot of love. You've done so well at PMQs. Yeah. All of your questioning was on Peter Mandelson was absolutely superb, brilliant, going into a fresh week, all guns blazing. And then today this happens. Mm-hmm. And she has to, bless her, I think she was at a farm or an abattoir or something, as her entire party is being butchered.
A massacre going on behind her.
There's a massacre going on. And this is how she addresses the Danny Krueger defection.
Well, Danny has made his case very clear that this is not about me. I can't be distracted by that. And I'm not going to get blown off course by these sorts of incidents. I know that this is the sort of thing that is going to happen while a party is changing. I am making sure that people understand what Conservative values are. It means living within our means. It means making sure that we are growing our economy. It means not wasting money on things like net zero, which are bankrupting the country, not wasting money on welfare to the people who shouldn't get it at the same time as we're not able to give it to those who need to get it. That's what we're very focused on now. And what I need to do is make sure that the public understands what today's Conservative Party is about, not yesterday's Conservative Party.
That's the best answer she could give.
Yes.
You acknowledge it, you regret it, you pivot on to talking about your policies. One reason why I was in a state of shock when Danny came out is partly because I felt Kemi had a good week.
Yes, I know.
And you're right, the defection is cruel because it pops that balloon after her excellent performance at PMQs and having the scalp of Peter Mandelson. But also this is coming just a couple of weeks before Tory party conference.
It could have been worse. He could have done this the day before Tory party conference.
And don't you think it will happen again?
What, somebody else between now and then?
Absolutely.
When are we going there?
This
It's the first weekend in October, isn't it?
This is the significance of Danny Krueger.
Yeah.
If him, then anyone. And I can see Reform just booking that ballroom every week for the next 3 months or so.
Having a succession.
Having a succession of people coming out just to eclipse Kemi. It's very sad for her. It's difficult for her to get a foothold in the news cycle.